says, still, if the fault is adventitious and the nature of beings is good, my anger is wrong, just as is anger's smoke's appearance in the sky. So anyway, those ideas come from Shantideva. Okay, then the third one is an analysis of whether the harm is direct or indirect. Anger is just unjustified. So I won't read the book, but just summarize. So this refers to Shantideva's wonderful example of the stick. And if somebody picks up a stick and hits you with a stick, do you get angry at the stick? Because that's the thing that actually causes pain, right? It's the stick that hurts and causes a wound and pain. But do we get angry at the stick? Because we think, no, it wasn't the stick, the fault of the stick, but the person who wielded the stick and hit me with it. So we get angry at the person. And then Shantideva says, but then why did the person do that? What forced the person or caused the person to hit me with a stick? It was their afflictions in their mind, anger, hatred, aggressiveness in their mind that caused them to pick up the stick and hit me with it. So just as we don't blame the stick because we say it was wielded by the person, we also shouldn't blame the person because they were wielded by their afflictions. So the real fault is the afflictions in the mind of the person. And so it doesn't make sense to be angry at the person, just as it doesn't make sense to be angry at the stick. So I think he calls this direct or indirect, because the direct cause of the harm was the stick, but we don't get angry at that. We get angry at the person, but also the person wasn't at fault. It was really their afflictions. So it's kind of indirect. There's a few steps there. Anger comes up in their mind, and they think, I'm going to pick up this stick and hit them. And so, it's indirect, a few things happening there. So again, it's kind of the same idea, that the real problem is the afflictions in the mind of a person that is the main cause for them behaving in the way they do that causes us suffering. So we should really blame the afflictions and not the person. It's unjustified to be angry at the person. And then the fourth point is an analysis of the cause that impels the harm doers. Anger is unjustified. And so here he talks about karma, saying that, I'll read what he says. The experience of suffering produced by those who harm does not occur causelessly or from discordant causes. So it occurs from concordant causes. That is to say, from non-virtuous actions you have done in the past. So this is looking at our own karma. So it's our own karma that is the cause for this situation to be happening, because if we hadn't done negative actions in the past, we wouldn't have this situation where we are being harmed. We did something harmful in the past that created the negative karma. One result of our negative karma is to experience a similar kind of thing that we inflicted on others. We hurt others, and we are going to be hurt by others. So that's the main cause for this situation to come about. And then he says, therefore, harm doers are helplessly impelled to do harm by the power of your consequently blame yourself, thinking this is my fault and I'm wrong to get angry at others, and stop your anger on all occasions. For example, it is similar to the way that beings produce the guardians of hell with their own bad karma, and these guardians then inflict harm on them. So, yeah, this is also from Shantideva, like where the descriptions of hell with these, I don't know what they're called, hell guardians, the hell guardians who are doing all these harmful things to the hell beings. So Shantideva says, these are created by our own mind. That's our own mind, our negative karma. Of course, not deliberately, consciously, we don't do this, but the afflictions in our mind are mainly anger. That would be the main affliction in this case. So our own anger and hatred and harmfulness that we did in the past, we inflicted harm on others, we did horrible things to others, and so those mental factors of ourself and the actions we did motivated by them, those are the cause of these appearances in hell, the hell beings inflicting harm on us. So it's similar in this life as well. When we are in a situation of someone wanting to harm us, actually trying to harm us, so this is created by our own mind, our own anger and hatred, maybe not in this life, but in past lives. So this is... But I think with this one, it's a little tricky. I mean, it's mainly, this is what we need to think for ourselves. We need to use this method to think about our own situations where we experience harm. But I think we have to be very careful when advising others. Yeah, especially like domestic violence, right? A wife or a girlfriend is being beaten up by their husband or their boyfriend. Yeah, I don't think it would be skillful to say, oh, this is your fault. Yeah, you created bad karma, and so that's why it's happening. Because there's, what's that expression, victim blaming? There's already a lot of that anyway going on in the world. Yeah, blaming the victim for the harm that they're experiencing, and that's not helpful psychologically. So yeah, be careful not to make that suggestion. And also, people often blame themselves. Yeah, they're already blaming themselves, but not in a healthy way, not in this way, as a method to stop being angry with the understanding of karma and dependent arising and so on and so forth, but thinking I'm a bad person, I'm a horrible person, I deserve this. So that's different. Okay, so we don't want to encourage that way of thinking. So yeah, I think it's mainly for ourselves to apply in our own practice. And of course, if there's someone who is a devout Buddhist and believes in the Buddhist teachings and karma and so on and so forth, we could, in that case, suggest this idea, because the Tibetans found this really helpful when they were being overtaken by the Chinese and put into prison and beaten and tortured. And they had strong belief in karma, strong belief in the Buddhist worldview, and thinking, okay, this is the result of my karma. I did bad things in the past, and that's why this is happening to me. So that really helped them keep their mind in a positive state, not get angry and hateful, and even have compassion. So for one's own practice, this can be really, really helpful. But just be careful when dealing with other people and their problems. Okay, so then, yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe looking for a way to think about this, because it's easy with this inherency on adventitiousness to get also the mind, okay, it's their afflictions. They shouldn't have the affliction. It's a wrong to have the affliction, or to blame oneself. I shouldn't have an affliction. Mm-hmm. Like I can catch myself too, could get really into this old, maybe Sunday school training that, yeah, they're an angry person and they shouldn't be. Right? So that it doesn't go in the direction that the antidote should take my mind, if I can get beyond that judgment itself for having them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess again, the Buddhist worldview versus the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview, we're created by God, and we're, of course we have original sin, but still we're created in the image of God. So yeah, we should be good. We should, be like God and the angels and the saints, and just holy and pure and so on, not angry. But that's different than the Buddhist worldview, where we weren't created by God, perfect being, but we have always existed in a state of ignorance and confusion and delusions, and that's just from beginningless time. No one created this situation. It's just always been. I mean, that's hard to understand, hard to accept. But anyway, it's just like, it's always been that way. And we never became free of it. We never managed to free ourselves from our confusion and our afflictions and so on. There's nobody to blame. Can't really blame anybody. It's just always been that way. So no point trying to figure out where it all came from and why and so on and so forth. But just like the Buddha said, don't worry about that, but focus on now. I have these afflictions and there are antidotes, and I have learned the antidotes, so let's just use them and get myself out. And the other person, and then the whole thing about Buddha nature is really helpful as well. Yes, I have afflictions, they have afflictions, but they're adventitious. They're not permanent. They're not who we are permanently for all of time. We have Buddha nature, we have all these positive qualities, positive potential. So if we practice the Dharma, we can get free of all of our afflictions. And that person also can become free of all their afflictions. They're not like permanent, inherent parts of us. So those thoughts can help counteract that, those old ways of thinking. Yeah, it takes time, especially if we have been exposed to other ways of thinking in our early childhood. They say the things we learn as children, are really kind of stamped in our mind, and not easy, even if we decide I don't want to follow that religion anymore, but we're still affected by it. So it's good to recognize that, good to recognize the differences. Okay, this is what I was told as a child. This is a different way of thinking, different way of explaining things, and just gradually get used to this new way, and then the old way will eventually fade and hopefully disappear. But yeah, it takes time. Any other questions about any of these?
I find that the points about how to look at what's going on in the world in the minds of the folks in power, like me, they're under the control of affliction, have this kind of mental illness. They don't have any wherewithal. They're being dragged through the mud about this. That helps my mind to not demonize them and be so angry with them. But they still are right now in power doing what they're doing. So then I've got to piggyback that with the idea that this is a collective karma as a people, that we're also experiencing the results. So I can't just take, there's definitely ways of looking at when harm is coming to individuals or groups, to use more than one or two antidotes, because sometimes I can get stuck and then still get angry because they're still in charge, even though they're really out of control. what do I do? Well, this is another piece that helps me to put it in a bigger perspective. So sometimes using a few of these things piggybacked on one another helps me to keep my mind a little bit more balanced rather than getting really flustered and overwhelmed.
And why are they in those positions? You know, there's always people who support them in a democratic country. There's a vote, so people voted. There's a lot of people who voted for that person to be in power and who still believe in that person being the right person to do the job. So, yeah, thinking that way too, you can't put all the blame on them.
Well, His Holiness says in the Ethics for a New Millennium, he says our politicians don't fall out of the sky, that they're actually a result of the collective societal ethical framework and ethical, minds of those that put them in power. So.
And then you look at history, so many things happened over time, and that also influenced the situation, the society, and people's minds, and so on. So many factors. It's just like, I find it really helpful to think that way, because then you realize it's less reason to blame that one person. Yeah. Something else that popped up in my mind while you were talking, I forgot what it was. Okay, maybe it'll come back. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, so we can move on. Next point, the next slide, on analysis of the subject. Anger is unjustified. So here it talks about how if we get angry at harm doer because we can't bear the suffering, it's contradictory. Because if we get angry and retaliate, we are creating the cause to experience even more suffering, worse suffering in the future. Like, especially if we're born in unfortunate realms and we'll be stuck there for a long time and experience a lot of suffering. And so it's like saying, I can't stand this suffering that this person is inflicting on me. It's unbearable, which, yeah, there's a good reason to. But if we think about, if I get angry and retaliate with anger towards this person, hurt them in return, what kind of karma am I creating? And what will be the result of that karma when it ripens in the future? It's going to be worse suffering, more suffering than what is happening to me right now. So, does that make sense? Right? I mean, it's reasonable to say, I don't want to suffer. I shouldn't have to suffer. Suffering is an aberration. Yeah. But how are we going to deal with this? I mean, it doesn't mean you have to just sit there and let yourself be beaten up, abused. But the point is, this is what we're looking at here is ways to stop anger and retaliation, wanting to retaliate, give harm for harm. So we can still do things to get ourselves out of this situation, to stop the person from harming us, if that's possible. That wasn't possible in the case of the Tibetans. They were trapped. They were in prison. They were under the control of the Chinese police and soldiers and so on. So they had no power to stop the suffering, the harm that was coming to them. So they just the only thing they had control over was their mind. And the same is true for many people around the world who are imprisoned, tortured, beaten, and so on. So they can't control the situation. They can't control the people doing harm to them, but they can control their own mind. And I've read stories of people doing amazing things, being able to manage their minds in those situations, because that's the only thing you can do, the only thing you can manage if you don't want to get angry. And this is the point here, how to stop ourselves from getting angry and retaliating. But if we can get ourselves out of the situation, like Shantideva says, if there is a remedy, a solution, then do it. Follow it. So, get yourself out of that situation, stop the person from harming you. That's completely fine. But the point here is not getting angry, to do it without anger and hatred and the desire to take revenge and harm that person. So that's what we're looking at here. So this particular method this one is really good too, really powerful. And then Lama Tsongkhapa goes on to talk about how the suffering that we are experiencing due to the harm doer's actions is the result of our own negative karma. And by experiencing it, by going through this suffering, we exhaust that karma. We're finishing that karma, like paying off the debt, karmic debt. So that is helpful too, to think, oh, yeah, this is bad, but I'm paying off my debts, reducing my karmic debt. And so that can give you some consolation in the situation. And also, on top of that, if we can bear the suffering with patience, then we avoid creating more negative karma, and instead we create merit, virtue, because practicing patience is virtuous. So being able to practice patience or fortitude or tolerance, whatever you want to call it, practicing that is virtuous. We're creating virtue, we're creating merit. So this gives us, in this situation, person harming us gives us a fantastic opportunity to create virtue, to create merit, and increase our patience, to make ourselves more habituated, more familiar with patience. And then that will build up in the future. We can become more and more and more and more patient. And of course, it's one of the perfections of a bodhisattva, one of the main practices of a bodhisattva. So it's a cause for enlightenment, progressing on the bodhisattva path and reaching enlightenment. So looked at in that point, from that point of view, this is like, wow. And they say like, oh, the person who harms us is helping us, providing us with this great opportunity to get rid of some bad karma and create good karma, create merit, virtue, practice patience, get more familiar with patience, less familiar with anger. Wow, what a great opportunity this is. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm not at that point yet, but if you think about these ideas and maybe try them out as well, you can eventually get to the point where, you can feel this is fantastic. This is a great opportunity. So, they say harm doers are kind and helpful, like great teachers. What's that verse in the 8 verses? One of those verses. I think it's number 6. Someone I have benefited and in whom I have placed great trust hurts me very badly. I will practice seeing that person as my most supreme teacher. Good to memorize those, then greater chance that they'll pop up in our mind in those kind of situations. And then also this kind of situation is compared to going through some unpleasant medical treatment in order to be cured of an illness. That's really helpful too. Like we probably all had that experience of having to get surgery or some other sort of unpleasant medical treatment that doesn't really feel very good, or even a vaccine, right? Getting a COVID vaccine, that's a little bit painful, and some people had bad reactions. They were sick for a couple of days, but we put up with that, thinking, wow, this will protect me from COVID, which would be far worse. I'd have a lot more suffering if I got that. So we put up with this little bit of relatively small amount of discomfort or unpleasant experiences to avoid something worse, something bigger. So it's a similar idea here, putting up with this difficult situation of this person being angry and wanting to harm me. But if I do it in the right way, use it as an opportunity to practice patience, not get angry, not create more bad karma, I'm creating virtue. And that will be the cause for good things in the future. There will be good results if I practice in that way. So it will help me avoid suffering and experience good things in the future. So I'll stop there. There's some more points we'll do next week. Any last questions or comments or stories? Selden?
I find it very helpful with people that, that I don't always get along with, to think of that they aren't, like you said earlier, that they aren't this affliction, that, that they aren't angry, they're inherently angry, they have been kind and they have, other good traits. It's not just this one trait in this moment that's coming out.
Yeah, that's really helpful too, to realize, to think of times when that person wasn't angry, wasn't harmful, and maybe was even kind and helpful. So then, it's not like permanent, inherently the way they are. Just because of causes and conditions, this situation has come about. But it's impermanent. It will pass. It will change. The person will change. So get used to that way of thinking too, because we tend to just focus on this one moment. The person is like that right now, and it can almost seem like they've been like that forever. They will be like that forever. It's like, wait a minute. Is that true? It really shows how our mind really sees things in distorted ways, distorts reality. Okay, so we'll stop there because, there's something else happening at 11. And so let's dedicate the merit, the positive energy of what we have done in this past hour and a half. Create a lot of virtue, and let's share that with all other beings. May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lusan's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
stop trace.